Hello. Hi, Pat. Hello.
Hello.
Hello to our viewers. Welcome to the Confident Grief Coach show. Today, we will be talking a little bit about how to navigate life after loss. In the grief space, as coaches, we get a lot of questions from grievers, especially for those who are newly in their grief with a fresh loss. It can feel super intimidating to think about how do you do life now that everything is different, now that your person is gone or whatever loss that you're experiencing has happened. Oftentimes our world gets flipped upside down and everything feels complicated and confusing. And a big question is how do we do this life now? And how do we have a plan for ourselves moving forward as far as meeting our needs emotionally and with all of the other life changes that are happening. So, Pat, I would love to have a conversation with you a little bit about how do we as grief coaches and just humans alive in this world that support other people going through grief, how do you navigate that space and what are some tools and insights that you can offer to our viewers here?
Well, I have a shirt on and it says just breathe. And that is probably the hallmark of what I teach people is how do I catch my breath? Because what we find, is when we're experiencing deep loss and grief, it's really hard to get a good deep breath, which is necessary for life.
Mm.
It gets stuck in our throats. So breathing is like a really huge thing. So that's one of the things that I first want to start out with my clients is learning how to take 3 soft, deep, gentle breaths and getting that integrated in all of our sessions so that it becomes a natural part of them. So that when they start feeling it in their bodies, they start seeing that they're really struggling, that they're going to naturally start going back to, okay, I need to breathe. I need to take a good inhale. I need to do a good exhale. So that's one of the first things that I do. Um, and so I'm going to throw it back to you. Tell me what's some of the first things that you think of.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you talk about just breathing because when we're thrown into loss, there's all the questions of like, we feel like we have to figure it all out like right away. Even when there's like, you might have immediate things that you have to figure out. I know for a lot of people, it's, oh, you got to figure out the paperwork and all the insurance things and maybe how to handle the estate or, planning the funeral and all of these things that need our immediate attention. But then, especially once a lot of those tasks are done, then you're left with like figuring out how do I like do this life now? And that can feel really overwhelming. And one of the first things that I share is like, okay, like you don't have to have all the answers right now. You're gonna figure it out. But like if the only thing that you do today is breathe, then that's enough. So I think just coming back to the breath is so powerful. And going off of that, Pat, you've created a whole model around navigating grief, focus on breathing, and breathe as an acronym to covering all of these different areas of life that we support our clients with that we've seen are incredibly transformational for helping someone to figure out the how to do life after loss and how do we do that in these tiny little bite-sized nuggets so that it's not so overwhelming so that we don't feel like we have to figure it all out immediately. So if you would just break down a little bit of what those main steps are in this breathe model that go along with the physical breathing of just taking it moment by moment, but what are those like larger pieces that you help your clients with, or that obviously we teach in the breathe model for grief, that can help someone work through big, the big questions of life after loss?
Big questions, big emotions, yeah, life-changing events. And people come to coaching because they want something changed. They want to make a change in their life. They're not coming to coaching to just talk about the loss all the time. They're coming because it's like, this isn't working for me and I need to move forward. So
Mm.
I just want to share that coaching is very different than talk therapy and that type of thing. So this model that you talked about, it actually came from working with many, many people who were bereaved, especially grieving moms. Very challenging pieces. And I've over years, you realize that grief touches so many aspects of our life. So it could be the deep loss of a loved one. It could be physical loss, physical challenges. I've had people come to me where their child has come out gay or they want to transition, and a parent's like, it's not that I don't support them, but I'm grieving the child who my child was
Mm.
and their gender identity at that time, and now all of a sudden it's like that child has changed and shifted, and now I need to, and so there's a grieving component with that. um and the fear that they have for their children or their loved ones. um so there's just a chronic pain, and people who are living with chronic pain, there's a lot of grief associated with that. And I had a conversation just this last weekend from a woman who has been in severe chronic pain for a very, very long time. And I actually coached her in not using the grief coaching program, kind of, but not perfectly with the Breathe program. And she said, you really need to work with people who are in chronic pain, Pat,
Mm.
because you gave me life, because the depression. So, and she goes, I didn't realize that I was grieving until I started working with you,
Mm.
that this was grief that was like in my body now because of this chronicity of the pain. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to lay that out there, that there's lots of different faces to grief. And so for you who are watching, you might think, well, I haven't experienced, a significant death of a loved one, or you're working in this space, just realize that there's lots of different people that can be supported with this. So what do we do? First you want to kind of see where you at. Where are you at? Where are you at in your grief journey? Is it brand new and you just need to be supported in some way, like how do I remember to brush my teeth? Or, have, like you said, all the paperwork and that type of thing, you may need support with that. And so what does that look like? Then we move into people want to change. So the big thing is, what is it that they want to change? What is the vision of where they want to get to? So in coaching, that's like creating goals. And that sounds like a big thing when you're grieving, but it really is like, how would you like to see your life in 60 days, 90 days, next year? And the client then can start taking, and so we do some exercises with that and some envisioning, what does that look like, so that we can help support our clients with that. um I
And
would say one.
I love
Oh, go
what
ahead.
you say about coaching as like driving a vehicle. It's a little different than talk therapy, which might be related to like, if you're in a car and you want to get somewhere, you want a destination or a goal, you want your life to be a certain way, you want to feel different than how you're feeling right now, you want to go from A to B. So, oftentimes talk therapy or counseling can be like looking in the rearview mirror, looking into the past, which can be helpful when there's trauma there and, other mental health diagnoses that need attention. Yes, absolutely. But with coaching, like you speak about with the Breathe program, it's really like, okay, well, you're in the car and you want to get from here to there. So how do we take you there? How do we drive the vehicle? And the client is driving their own car. They're in charge of their own life and they're the expert and they're deciding which turn, which path to take. And as coaches, we're sitting there next to them, helping them read the map, helping them navigate those turns or those roadblocks that might come up. But I love that that is so important that people, you know, when you're asking someone, especially in grief, like what do you want in your life now? Like what does your life look like? And that can be such a scary question because
Hmm.
they've been thrown into this immense change that's totally unwanted in a lot of different ways. But figuring out, if we're going to make those changes and we're going to take the car somewhere, you really have to pick a destination on the map and start to
Yep.
map out that route to get there. So I just wanted to like add that in because I think that's really empowering as far as like, envisioning having an idea of like how you want to be or what you want your life to look like and getting really clear on that because that allows us to then like help you get there, help yourself get there and find the tools that are going to keep you on track to like reaching that destination. So I just wanted to emphasize that part
Yeah,
of like I love that like visioning process of like, okay, well, I'm daydreaming about my life being like this. And that can be really hard to reach for someone when you're just in the depths
absolutely.
of the deep grief, and you might think about all the things that you don't want to be happening, but I think when we can shift focus to what we do want to be happening, that gives us choice and that gives us power to then take steps towards that.
It is. It's that shifting. I was just thinking about that because a lot of people will go, I don't want to feel this way anymore. Okay, so let's take that instead of the don't. How do you want to feel? And sometimes it is just like, I want peace in my life. Okay, what does peace look like? So as a coach, we're drilling into what does that look like? What are some concrete things so that we can help our clients have a vision, a goal, that isn't like wooey or oh my gosh, I need to change my life and move to Tahiti or whatever. It's like these are actionable things that we incorporate into day-to-day life. So that's really taking a look at where are you at and where is it, what do you want? You're coming to coaching for a reason, and we help through our questioning what is that reason. And then going back to the support system, I think that's one of my favorite things is how do you find your tribe? How do you find the people that can support you? And that tribe may change over time, but if you are new in your grief, you may need to have someone in your tribe that can help you do the paperwork,
Mm.
right? To help you find, okay, I need this many death certificates. I need to put this. I need to go there. I have no clue because your brain isn't working. And so we talk
Yeah.
about that, like what's the science behind what's going on neurologically with your brain with grief. It is not a, I'm crazy, I should be in a different spot. There is really neurobiology that we know of. And so that's an important thing, I think, for any coach, therapist, whatever, is to explain what is happening so that your client understands. And if you're a person who's grieving right now, to understand that you're not crazy, these are actual things that are going on in your brain, and to have some context behind that. We go through, I do a lot of stuff, you do a lot of stuff. How do we get into the health? Your embodied grief support. What does grief do to the body? So do you want to talk a little bit about how you bring embodiment to people who are grieving?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's one of the first things I share with my clients too, like you mentioned, because when you're in that deep grief, you feel like you can't think straight, you have no idea what's going on, you can't remember things clearly, your body might be feeling a lot of different things that could come up as far as like, a lot of people experience challenges with sleeping or eating or energy levels, fatigue, all of these different things. For me, it was a lot of anxiety and panic attacks that came up. So it's different for each person, but at the core of this is the grief affecting our brain and our nervous system on a physiological level, because that human part of us that has evolved over hundreds of thousands of years has learned that we are safe in connection with our people. We are mammals, we are reliant on one another for survival. So when we lose someone, that activates our body's stress response, that puts us into a state of survival mode in order to stay safe. So all of the physical experiences, all of the mental challenges that are coming up, it's not your fault. You're not crazy. You're just in grief and your body is in grief. And that's an attempt for your whole system to keep you safe as you navigate the pain and the challenges of the situation. So that's part of the reason why I like to explain this with my clients and to keep encouraging them to breathe. Because even breathing is challenged when we're in grief. We might
Right?
hold our breath up in here and it's like, okay, how can we get that deep belly breath, that diaphragmatic breath that actually activates that body's healing mode, that relaxation mode to take us out of that stress response and into a place where we can be just a little bit more relaxed or a little bit more clear-headed. So, learning a little bit about what's going on, noticing how you're feeling in your grief can actually be super empowering, because then we get to work with okay, how do we support the body through these challenges so that you feel like you can function a little better, so that you can sleep a little bit better at night, and so that you can maybe eat without, wanting to vomit because your digestive system
Right.
is just like turned off through the stress of it all. So those
Or
little things are
overeat,
also, yeah, the
feeding,
emotional
feeding,
eating.
feeding the emotional loss, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All of it's valid. And I think, like you mentioned, having that awareness of like, okay, well, where are you at with everything? And feeling into that a little bit and just noticing what's going on internally is a really important part of that process. And then having those right tools to support yourself on that physiological level, on that very basic level of meeting your needs as a person who's in a stress response, who's in survival mode, addressing that first can really go a long way.
And I also think, like with body workers and that type of thing, I've had so many people come that they're grieving and they're like, I'm taking yoga, I'm doing massages, I'm doing Reiki, I'm just doing these things because it helps, them to connect to their bodies. But
Mhm.
also the people who are the grief supporters, the grief professionals. I have had a lot of people come into our class, our certification, and they are body workers or energy workers and that type of thing. And they're like, I have so many people coming to my table or coming to my class, and they're grieving, and I just need some more tools to be able to support them because it's
Mhm.
a holistic approach. And I think that's where I want to go to is with this conversation is it's a holistic approach. There is no one size fits all. And
Mhm.
so for me and the Breathe coaching model for grief, that's where we want to have that flexibility, that fluidity, because for our clients, everyone's grief is individual. It's their own grief. They may have similarities in the type of loss and may be looking for people that can connect with them. But the bottom line is your grief is your own because it's the relationship you have with whatever that loss was is very personal, like your fingerprints, very individual. And so that's where I think any program that, if you're offering programs because you're a professional and you're offering grief support to people, make sure that you have that fluidity and that type of thing, but also to have actions. And so that's where with coaching, actions are important. It keeps people on track too. They're coming because they want to move forward. They want to be driving in that car and get to destination B because they're really, really overwhelmed, stressed out, exhausted from being at point A. So we do a lot of different things, and some of it's reframing, like reframing our thoughts and how, because sometimes our thoughts can stop us.
Mhm.
It's not that you shouldn't have those thoughts, but sometimes they can stop us, or the not so positive thoughts. And so we do, talk about that, and we talk about toxic positivity. It's like some people just think, "Oh, you can think yourself out of that." Yeah, we can. We know that our thoughts and our can change our lives physically, mentally, spiritually. But there's also time to not feel like you have to have a certain thought, that it's okay to sit in it. And as coaches, we allow our clients to sit in these emotions while helping them to shift to a more positive aspect of what works for them. So it's all very individual.
Mhm.
And, I guess that those are the powerful things that I think that we do. And then offering to get to that point of what's next. And to me, that's hope. And it's honoring our purpose every day. That's my acronym for hope is we all have a purpose here, and finding what that is, whether you're a bereaved mom and it's caring for your grandchildren, that may be your purpose and where you can extend your love. And we were just talking to someone, and where they said their bereaved spouse, widow, and like I didn't believe, I thought I'd be drained working, and helping others in grief. And what I found is I got energy from it. And she started tearing up because it's so powerful to find that hope
Yeah.
in the depths of despair.
Yeah. Right. And also not fast forwarding to that point because I think there's a lot of pressure for people in grief. Like, I think as a culture, we do a poor job with allowing that space to just feel it all and to be in the depths of your despair because that's totally like warranted for the reality of the situation, but also without getting stuck there forever because I think there's these patterns of suppression or avoidance or distraction that we might fall into that are not supporting us. And we talked about that toxic masculine or toxic positivity of like skipping over the bad stuff and just getting to the hope and the purpose already, right? And it's like, well, that's not realistic. You might have glimpses of that amongst, the storm, but when we have these the correct tools and resources and coming back to really that toolbox of how to cope, how do you navigate the physical symptoms, the panic attacks that might come up, or those thoughts of the guilt and the shame spiral that come with grief brain, and these stories and these thoughts about how things should have gone differently. Like all of that is so valid and we can't just pass over it.
Right.
And that's where this deep diving work comes in of then let's find those tools and those coping skills that are going to work for you in your individual grief so that you can get to that root of where that challenge is, sit with it, love on it, address it, and shift it, transform it so that it's not actually as much of an issue for you anymore. And then you'll find the space to open up to the hope and how you want to give back to your community and maybe how you want to show up for other people in grief or whatever legacy project might feel good for you with your experience that you went through, integrating those changes into our life rather than trying to like skip over it and get back to normal or just move on or get over
Right.
it, right? It's like, no, this you're going through this, it's real. You're changing as a person, you're becoming something totally new and different. How can we learn about this new part of your life, this new chapter that you're stepping into, even though a lot of it is unwanted and scary and painful? This is now these new layers that we're needing
Yep.
in, we're
Yep.
folding into our life, and that gets to be empowering when we can find the proper support and resources. So that's what I love about like just the breathe method of just breathing, right? Breathing through it in every moment, but also like finding these different layers of support that we need to gather for ourselves so that we feel like we can really integrate these changes and the losses that we're going through. And that's different for everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess, to kind of wrap this all up, there are so many awesome ways to help process grief. We never get over it. The grieving patterns will change. And so if you are a professional or wannabe professional, check out our Confident Grief Coach. What is it? Our Confident Grief Coach School app that we'll have in the notes because there's a free app that we're providing tools and resources to think about how you can do that. Um, you can go over to our website, healingfamilygrief.com, and get yourself actually a free ebook of the Confident Grief Coach. So if that's your jam, or if you are the griever, look in the show notes, and Cami has her information in there, and she'd be a wonderful person to reach out to and just have a conversation. How might a coaching program for you as someone who is grieving support you in this journey that we're all going to go through at one time or another, but we're
Yeah.
here to support you in that.
Mm. Beautiful. Thanks for all your insight and wisdom with all of this. I know it's part of our hope and purpose with showing up in this space to hopefully offer some helpful nuggets to those who might be listening, whether you're deep in your grief or a professional wanting to help other people navigate the throes of grief and loss. Thanks for being here. And if you liked this, please do share with someone that might find this helpful, and give us a like and a subscribe so that you can be notified for all the other videos that we'll put out of all the other tools and resources for navigating life after loss and all the grief things.
And
So
comment. We'd love to hear from people, so we'd love to hear your perspective or what's going on with you. That always helps us to figure out what might we be able to share to help you and support you in the future.
beautiful. Thank
See you
you. Thank
next
you, Pat.
time.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.